My name is Dianne Whelan, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. The 2 films I've made have both been extreme films. One was up in the Arctic and one was on Mount Everest. I'd been a photographer for 20 years, and a lot of my photographs had a strong narrative to them. Mostly images of women, but there was a lot of theater to my imagery and a lot of narrative to my imagery. And so I sort of had felt for like 20 years I didn't really know what I was doing. I almost stumbled into it. I started thinking about the idea of incorporating my writing with my photographs, and then the idea of, after 20 years of still images, I was really excited to start working with moving images. I suddenly realized that everything that I'd been doing for 20 years that just sort of seemed all sporadic and unrelated, all sort of fused together under this label of documentary filmmaking. It brought in the journalism, the writing, the photography, and my love of adventure. I wanted a program that for sure incorporated the art, because first and foremost, whether you're making fiction or nonfiction films, this is an artistic medium. I mean, a documentary at the end of the day is a collage of something, you know, your impression of something. And there's all kinds of different ways of doing that. So I wanted the opportunity creatively, but I also wanted the very pragmatic, hands-on, I want to make a living from what I'm doing. I don't want to go to school and work at a coffee shop. It always begins actually with an image for me, because as a photographer, I saw this photograph of a snowmobile being driven by an Inuit with a gigantic red Canadian flag flying off the back of it in this sort of white, pristine environment. And something, it was like, you know, when the Grinch stole Christmas, when his heart grew through sizes, it was like one of those moments. It was like, and I had this like great sense of, maybe it was nationalism, patriotism, I don't know what it was, or a call to adventure. I'm like, yeah, I gotta get myself on one of those machines and like go on that journey. I basically had to convince the Army to take me. It was basically 8 of us. We did a 2,000-kilometer trip up the most northern coastline of Canada. It was a secret military mission, and it was composed of traditional knowledge experts, Inuit traditional knowledge experts. I think there was 5 of them, and 2 Canadian Army guys and me. Because I had this deal with this magazine to write an article on the Arctic trip for Outpost, they phoned me up, literally, like I still had frostbite on my nose from the Arctic, and they phoned me up and I'm like, hey, you want to go to Everest? And I'm like, sure. And they're like, I'm like, when? And they're like, in 4 days. 40 days at base camp, well, really that story began for me as a child. I, somewhere reading a National Geographic magazine in the 70s, saw a picture of Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, who were the 2 first people to successfully summit Everest in the 1950s. And it was after the Second World War, and you had a man from the West, from New Zealand, and you had a Sherpa from India and Nepal. So you had a man from the East and a man from the West. And together they summited this mountain, and neither of them ever admitted who stood on the top the first. So for me, it was a noble story of ambition, but it also deviated from that white man colonial attitude thing where like, wow, have we shifted? Are we actually starting to see each other as equals? Wow, that's a pretty profound shift. It's the 1950s. So I was really struck by that, even as a kid. Believe in yourself. First and foremost, don't sit down and let your brain go on about all the reasons why this can't work, because it won't. I mean, thought becomes deed, and deed becomes destiny. So if you don't believe in yourself, nobody's ever going to believe in you. And you have to, you know, give yourself the opportunities you want. Don't wait for someone else to give them to you. Create them for yourself. And that's the best advice I can give.